Hi, and welcome to Studio SN. My name is Sara Naumann, and today we're going to create pattern with embossing powder using WOW embossing powders and chopsticks. On my card, I've got a heat embossed background with a really fun plaid pattern. And I think as I wiggle this, you can probably see the shine of the embossing powder on here, but you can also see that I've got this plaid design on here, which has almost been kind of scratched into the embossing powder. And it was made with a very technical tool, the wooden chopstick. Super easy technique to do. So let me show you how I've done it. First, I'm going to start with a piece of glossy white cardstock. And I like using glossy white cardstock for this technique because glossy cardstock goes so nicely with embossing powders. It really helps to make the embossing powder color really stand out. And I'm working with the primary Luscious Lime, and this is from WOW embossing powders. And the first thing I need to do with this is totally ink it up with an embossing ink. And so you can use a Versamark, or if you have the Watermark Resist ink pad, either one of those will work. So I'm going to put this up onto a piece of scrap paper just to keep it off my craft sheet, and simply take off the lid of my embossing ink and press it onto my glossy cardstock. And I want to get a good even coverage on here. So I'm pressing pretty firmly, make sure I get all of the corners and the edges and not get my thumbprint in there as well. And then what I'm going to do is open this up so I have kind of a funnel effect with this folded paper, and take my embossing powder and sprinkle this all over. And I do need to be pretty generous with this. There's no waste, so once I cover this up, what I'm going to do is tap off any excess this way and then slide it the other way. Just make sure that I have completely covered piece of cardstock. And then what I can do is just use this as a funnel to get my excess embossing powder right back into the jar, so I can use that for later. So I'm going to set this aside and then bring back in my piece of glossy cardstock. Here's where the chopstick is going to come in. And I want to scrape in a plaid design, so I'm just going to come in here, start at one side, and simply scrape that in. So this has not been heat set yet. Now I want my plaid to be more or less even, so I'm going to start at the other side and then come along like this so I get them fairly even, and then I can turn it this way and just repeat the process to get a plaid design. So you could do stripes, you could do plaid, you could do squiggles. I like my plaid to be a little bit wonky, which is a good thing because it's kind of wonky anyway. So I'm just going to go back and give another go around here, just so it has a little bit more of a casual effect. And then I want to give my piece a frame too, so I'm going to turn this over and use the blunt end of my chopstick and just come along here and kind of just scrape off some of the excess around here on the sides. And you'll notice that I'm getting these little piles. It's kind of like mowing your lawn. You get these little piles of embossing powder, and what I'm going to do is just make sure to tap that off, as much of it as I can, before I heat set it. So I think you can see there's a little blob right down there. So just tap it off. Don't put these back into your embossing powder jar because they've got that Versamark on it. So once they get into the jar, they can contaminate the rest of it and make it all sticky. So now that I've got all of this sketched in here, I just need to go ahead and heat set it with my heat embossing gun. And that will basically melt the embossing powder and give me a really fun shiny effect that looks like this. So here's my heat embossed piece already done, and I think you can see the shimmer of this, the shine of it, and then also my pattern in here as well. A couple of things when you're actually doing the heat embossing, it takes longer than you would expect, at least for me, because you're covering an entire piece and you do have an entire layer of embossing powder on there, so it'll take a couple of minutes. So be patient. Also be patient when it's done heat embossing, because you need to let it cool down before you pick it up, especially if you put your finger into it. It's going to be hot, basically melted plastic, and that can really hurt. So just 2 tips to keep in mind when you do the heat embossing, but once you let it cool, then you've got a really fun piece to play with. So I'm going to bring back in my card, and you can see what I've done with it. Simply used it as my background. And I've done a little cupcake sticker on here, and this is from Hot Off the Press. This is their Hey Cupcake Dazzles. You can see that I like these quite a lot. I've used almost the whole sheet. And I've just simply put it onto white cardstock, and then I colored these in with my Spectrum Noir pens. So the alcohol pens work really nicely with this. So I use CR8 and also BP6 for the cupcake. And then for the cupcake wrapper, I use CG4. So all of these were used to just color in that little piece, which has been put up on foam tape. And then I matted this onto black. You can see how I've got the border of the white going around here where I've scraped off more of the embossing powder. And then just simply put it up onto some pink pattern paper. So this is how to create simple patterns in your embossing using a simple tool like a chopstick. I hope you enjoyed today's show. For more ideas and inspiration, please do stop by my website at saranaumann.com. Thank you for joining me on Studio SN, and I will see you again next time.